The day after her mother's funeral, Diane Mercer sat alone in the house where she had spent the last 6 years of her life. The casseroles from neighbors were still on the counter. The sympathy cards were still unopened on the hall table. She wasn't crying anymore. She was numb, and then her phone rang. It was a woman from the bank, someone from the estate department, calling to discuss the accounts. "Mrs. Mercer." The woman said carefully, "I want to make sure you're aware the primary accounts were closed out approximately 14 months ago. There's very little left in the estate." Diane didn't understand. She asked the woman to repeat herself. "But the accounts, ma'am, they were liquidated by the authorized power of attorney holder." Diane's hand tightened on the phone. "My brother," she said. It wasn't a question. There was a pause on the other end. "Yes, ma'am, a Craig Mercer." Diane set the phone down on the table. She didn't hang up. She just set it down. And she sat there in the house she had given her life to, the house where she had bathed her mother and changed her sheets and held her hand through every confused and frightened night. And she realized that, while she was doing all of that, her brother had been quietly stealing everything. Diane Mercer had been a school librarian for 22 years. She loved her work. She loved the kids who came in at lunch just to sit quietly and read. She loved the order of it, every book in its place, every story waiting to be found. She had a life. A small, good life. In 2017, her mother Ruth, then 75, was diagnosed with early-stage dementia. The diagnosis wasn't a surprise exactly. Diane had noticed things for a year already. The repeated questions, the confusion about dates. The time Ruth left the stove on for 3 hours. Her brother Craig called from Nashville when he heard the news. "We'll figure something out," he said. "Don't worry, Di. We'll figure it out together. Together." Diane would think about that word a lot in the years that followed. Because what together turned out to mean was this. Diane quit her job. Diane moved into her mother's house. Diane managed every medication, every doctor's appointment, every insurance form, every confused 3 a.m. phone call when Ruth woke up terrified and didn't know where she was. Craig sent a flower arrangement at Christmas. He called on Ruth's birthday. Most years. A woman making soup at a stove, checking a medication organizer, folding laundry in a dim hallway. Diane told herself it was fine. Craig had his own life, his business, his family. She told herself she wasn't doing it for recognition. She was doing it for her mother. She told herself that when the time came, when it was over, the family would handle things fairly. She believed that. For 6 years she believed that. Ruth Mercer was not a woman who asked for much. She had taught 4th grade for 31 years in a small Tennessee town. She was known for 2 things: her patience with struggling readers and her absolute insistence on honesty. Tell the truth, she used to tell her students, even when it costs you, especially then. By 2019, Ruth's dementia had progressed to the point where her good days and bad days were unpredictable. On good days, she knew exactly where she was, remembered her grandchildren's birthdays, and asked Diane about books she wanted to read. On bad days, she called Diane by her sister's name, a sister who had been dead for 20 years. She asked for her husband, who had passed in 2009. She sometimes forgot that she was home. But even on the hard days, even when Ruth's memory slipped, there was something in her that remained, a dignity, a core. And in the last clear weeks of her life, that core recognized something was wrong. She just couldn't find the words to say what it was. By 2020, Diane had not had a full night's sleep in over 2 years. She had burned through her own modest savings. She had cashed out a small retirement account to cover gaps when Ruth's Social Security and pension didn't stretch far enough. She had no income, no health insurance, no social life, no plan for her own future. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself Craig would help reimburse her when things were sorted out. "Just keep the receipts," he said once on one of his occasional phone calls. "We'll make it right." She kept the receipts. She kept every single one, in a folder, organized by month, because Diane had been a librarian for 22 years, and she believed in keeping records. What she didn't know, what no one had told her, was that Craig had been keeping his own kind of records. In the spring of 2020, during one of his visits, Craig arrived with a notary and a stack of documents. Ruth was having a good day, alert, smiling, pleased to see her son. Craig explained that the papers were just basic estate planning, a power of attorney, in case something happened. Just a formality, Mom. Just so I can help if you need me. Ruth signed. Diane was at the pharmacy when it happened. She came home to find Craig's car gone, and her mother watching television, cheerful and unconcerned. Craig came by, Ruth said. He brought that nice man with the briefcase. Diane asked what papers she had signed. Oh, just some things, Ruth said. Craig said it was fine. Diane called Peg that evening. He told her it was just a healthcare proxy. Nothing to worry about. He'd email her the details. He never did. Over the next 18 months, Craig made several more visits to Tennessee. He was charming during each one. He brought Ruth her favorite candy. He fixed the loose step on a back porch. He sat with her and watched old movies and made her laugh. And, in between those visits, quietly, carefully, he dismantled everything. He transferred Ruth's primary savings account, $218,000 accumulated over 40 years of teaching and careful living, into an account he controlled. He sold a 6-acre parcel of family land that Ruth had always intended to keep in the family. He listed it through his own real estate contacts. He pocketed $94,000. He hired an attorney in Nashville, one Diane had never heard of, and had Ruth's will revised. In the new version, Craig was sole beneficiary. Diane was not mentioned. Ruth, on her good days, sometimes seemed unsettled. She asked Diane once, out of nowhere, "Is Craig supposed to have my bank book?" Diane said she didn't know. She asked Craig. He said their mother was confused, that she mixed things up sometimes, that Diane shouldn't worry. And Diane, exhausted, isolated, trusting, believed him, because he was her brother, because she had known him her whole life. Because she could not imagine that the person she had grown up with, the person who called on their mother's birthday, was capable of this. But what Diane didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Craig was $340,000 in debt from a failed commercial real estate deal. He had been for 2 years. He wasn't stealing out of casual greed. He was stealing because he was desperate. And desperate people, the ones who tell themselves they'll pay it back eventually, are sometimes the most dangerous ones. Ruth Mercer passed away in March of 2023. She went peacefully, in her own bed with Diane beside her. In her final weeks, Ruth had been mostly nonverbal, but she had held Diane's hand with remarkable strength for someone so frail. On one of her last nights, she had looked at Diane with sudden clarity, the kind of clarity that sometimes visits people at the very end, and she said, "The Bible, Diane, the blue one," and then she closed her eyes. Diane thought she was confused. She thought it was a random memory surfacing, the way memories do at the end. She didn't look in the Bible that night. 3 days later, Ruth was gone. Craig flew in for the funeral. He was gracious, composed, appropriately sorrowful. He hugged Diane. He said all the right things. He had brought his own attorney. 2 days after the funeral, that attorney contacted Diane to inform her that, per the terms of Ruth's most recent will, dated November 2021, the estate would pass entirely to Craig. The house, the remaining accounts, everything. Diane would receive nothing. She had given 6 years of her life. She had given her career, her savings, her health, her sleep, and she would receive nothing. Right? Right. Woman standing alone in a kitchen, late at night. The lights are off except for one lamp. She's very still. Softly. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Not right then. She just stood in her mother's kitchen in the dark, and she thought about a blue Bible on the shelf in her mother's bedroom. And she went to find it. The Bible was where it had always been, on the shelf above her mother's nightstand, between a ceramic owl and a photograph of Ruth and her late husband on their wedding day. Diane, take it down. She held it for a moment, then she opened it. Tucked between the pages of the 23rd Psalm was a folded piece of paper, Ruth's handwriting, shaky, the way it had gotten in her last year, but deliberate, like she had written it slowly and carefully and with full intention. Dion sat down on the edge of the bed and read it. "Dion, I'm writing this on a good day. because I am afraid I won't have many more. But I know something is wrong. I know because he asked me not to tell you. When someone asks you not to tell your daughter something, it is wrong. I love you. I always wanted you to have the house. I always wanted things to be fair. I don't think they are going to be fair. I'm sorry. Keep being good, Mom. Diane read the letter 3 times. Then she called a neighbor, Evelyn Marsh, who had lived next door for 30 years. Evelyn had been waiting for that call. She told Diane that she had watched Craig arrive with a notary on 3 separate occasions over the past 2 years. She had kept notes, dates, times, descriptions of the man with the briefcase, because something had felt wrong to her too. She had never said anything because she hadn't been sure, because it wasn't her place. But I kept the notes, Evelyn said. I kept every one. The next morning, Diane called an elder law attorney. His name was James Whitfield. He had been practicing estate law in Tessie for 30 years. When Diane laid out everything, the letter, the bank call, Evelyn's notes, the timing of the power of attorney, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Mrs. Mercer, I think you need to contact Adult Protective Services. And I think we need to pull some records. What James Whitfield found over the following 6 weeks was methodical and damning, and, in one crucial detail, criminal. The power of attorney Craig had obtained was legitimate. Ruth had signed it on a day when she had legal capacity, and the notary had done his job. That part, technically, held up. But the land sale was different. The deed for the 6-acre parcel required both Ruth's signature and a witness signature from a disinterested party. When Whitfield obtained a copy of the deed and cross-referenced the witness signature against public notary records, the signature didn't match. The notary stamp was valid, but the witness had never been present. The signature had been forged. That single detail changed everything. Forgery on a real estate document is not a civil matter. It is a crime. Adult Protective Services opened a formal investigation. The bank records, subpoenaed as part of the process, laid out the full picture in clean, brutal detail. $218,000 withdrawn from Ruth's accounts over 19 months. A pattern of transfers, small enough not to automatically trigger bank alerts, large enough to drain everything. The 6-acre land sale. The revised will, drafted by an attorney who, investigators noted, had not followed standard protocols for ensuring the client's legal competency at the time of signing. Softly, and Ruth's letter, handwritten, dated, filed as evidence. Whitfield explained to Diane what they were looking at. He told her the process would take time. He told her it would be painful. I know, she said. You may not recover everything, he said. I want to be honest with you about that. I know that too, she said. She wasn't doing this to get rich. She had never cared about getting rich. She was doing it because her mother, in her last clear moments, had written a shaky note and hidden it in a Bible. And the least Diane could do was make sure it was heard. Craig Mercer did not go quietly. He hired an aggressive attorney. He claimed the transfers had been authorized. He claimed Ruth had been fully competent and fully willing. He claimed Diane was motivated by jealousy and resentment. But the forged signature on the land deed was not a matter of interpretation. And when investigators looked more closely at the records Craig submitted to support his claims, the documentation of Ruth's authorization of several large transfers, they found inconsistencies that his own attorney could not explain. Craig was charged with elder financial exploitation and forgery. Both are felony charges under Tennessee law. He did not go to prison. His attorney negotiated a settlement, a guilty plea to a reduced charge, restitution payments, and a permanent record. His real estate license was revoked. The revised will, the one that left Diane nothing, was contested in probate court. With Whitfield's documentation, with Evelyn's notes, with the bank records, and with the Adult Protective Services findings, the court set the will aside. An earlier will, the one Ruth had made in 2018, before Craig had obtained his power of attorney, was valid, and it was clear. In that will, Ruth had left the house to Diane. She had specified that the land parcel, the 6 acres Craig had already sold, was to be divided equally between her 2 children. Diane could not recover the land. It had been legally transferred, forgery aside, and unwinding it entirely proved too complicated and too expensive. But she kept the house. And Craig was ordered to pay back a portion of what he had taken, a court-mandated restitution amount that he would be paying in monthly installments for years. It was not everything. It was never going to be everything. But it was something, and it was the truth. Diane Mercer still lives in her mother's house. She repainted the kitchen in the fall, a soft yellow that Ruth had always said she wanted but never got around to choosing. She planted bulbs along the front walk, the way her mother had always planned to. She went back to work part-time, not as a librarian. Her position had been long filled. But she volunteers at the county library 3 days a week, and they have started talking about a paid position. It's not what she had before, but it's hers again. She keeps Ruth's letter in a frame on the nightstand. She doesn't talk about Craig often. When she does, she speaks carefully, without cruelty, but without softening the truth either. He made choices, she says. And those choices have consequences. There are nights when she sits on the back porch and goes over the math. The year she didn't work, the retirement savings she spent, the career that bent and didn't fully come back. She doesn't pretend the numbers are okay. They're not. They probably won't be, not fully. But there is something else she thinks about on those evenings too. She thinks about her mother's handwriting, shaky but deliberate, in that blue Bible, keep being good. And she thinks, I did, Mom. I kept being good. And in the end, that's the only inheritance that no one can take from you. Final frame fades in. Final frame, the blue Bible on the nightstand, sunlight across it. If someone in your life is caring for an aging parent right now, someone who is giving everything and getting very little back, please share this story with them, not because bad things will happen, but because knowing the warning signs is the difference between being protected and being devastated. Subscribe to Caregiver Betrayal Stories. Every week, we share a story that could protect someone you love. And drop a comment below. Did you see the warning signs coming? Or did Craig fool you too?